All right, everyone, thank you for joining us on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC podcast. So today we're joined by another fellow podcaster, Paul Rhodes from Maintenance Mindset. How are you, my friend?
Fantastical. Great to see you.
You as well. And for those who don't know, Paul is also considered the Billy Graham of the apartment maintenance industry. I had to go there, didn't I?
Oh gosh. Okay. I aspire to be the Billy Graham. If we're gonna go with that as a label or a term, that's like an aspirational thing.
I agree. Oh, I get it. I have been recently called the Mr. Rogers of the HVAC industry because I just like to sit there and tell stories. So sometimes we get labels whether we want them or not.
I think I'm gonna eventually have a business card made that just says weirdo loudmouth maintenance guy, and hand that out because that's kind of it. I like thinking of weird thoughts, specifically about being an apartment maintenance technician.
Yep.
And just how much fun and great that is as an industry. So wait a second. I guess I'm now evangelizing and I'm in the direction of Billy Graham.
That's exactly right. That's why it was mentioned about you, because you have that directive, and I completely get it. And that's really what we're here to do. We're here to talk about the fun and the interesting things that you find in property maintenance and our trades in general. And a lot of times for young technicians, especially if they get stuck in installation and that's all they get to see, they don't get to have the fun of the industry that you and I have obviously had, because we're still here, still having fun. And even myself, I actually spent a fair amount of time in property maintenance. So I got into the industry in a family-owned commercial refrigeration business, and about 4 or 5 years in, I'm like, I don't know about this whole working for family deal. And I was pretty active into the Masonic fraternity, so I went and worked at the Indiana Masonic Home. And so then I was doing HVAC, refrigeration, plumbing, electrical. I was working on everything in the individuals' homes. We had homes, we had apartments, and then we had our actual hospital. We had a full hospital, like a 5-story hospital, and then we had all of our indoor apartments, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. So we had all sorts of stuff. And I have to say, some of the funnest stories ever came out of that particular section of my life. And I think we need to share some of those stories so people that understand that property maintenance has got so many things going for it that people don't think about. Like, you're working indoors most of the time.
Oh yeah. Yes. And there is that reality. Yes, the property and multifamily properties all go, and decisions are based off of curb appeal. Yes. Which is often viewed as the outside, the exterior. And that's where customers see, but that goes back to that first impression. The workers, however, the majority of the day is spent inside or in environmentally controlled places, to where if the weather is really, really bad outside, well, there's enough stuff to keep us busy on the inside of our buildings. So it's a much more favorable environment a lot of times.
Especially in the Midwest, where it's super hot in the summer and super cold in the winter. And if you're working residential like commercial, you're going to be out in those elements quite a bit, especially if you get into refrigeration.
Oh yeah, yes, and so that's a huge benefit. And ultimately, for me though, the attraction is the people. Yeah. The fact, just like what you said, you're dealing with a hospital, so then you've got both a professional clientele and you've got patients that you have to serve, and it's that aspect of service to me is the huge attraction. Work is work, and being productive, it's going to be found wherever it is. But there's just something really unique about. I had a resident that he retired from the Marine Corps as a colonel, and he still sticks in my head today. He was at the very first property that I was the maintenance supervisor for, and I to this day don't ever remember him saying his last name, but it was Colonel Bob. And Colonel Bob, granted, this was back when we still had smoking as a norm, a
Indoors.
cultural
It
norm.
was absolutely.
But I'd go to an apartment, and even if it wasn't Colonel Bob's apartment, he would stop me because he was sitting outside on his porch, and he always had the huge big stogie that he would smoke, and then he'd call me in and say, Paul, when you get finished, stop over here. Although, in order to get the feeling right, it was more like, Paul, come on over, have a seat.
Get the smokers talk.
So I'd go fix whatever needed fixing or do whatever the job was, and then on the way by, invariably I'd end up in Colonel Bob's apartment, and he would tell me stories of Marine Corps and Vietnam, and just some of them old Marine, some of them were off color and politically incorrect,
Right.
but the life lessons that this guy had and what he shared of the battlefield and stressful stories, I know I will never ever have to deal with that. But eventually, Colonel Bob passed away while living there, and his wife had to move out. And I will never ever remember or forget having to get that apartment ready, and the layers of tobacco smoke on the walls. Yes, from a work standpoint, it was very challenging. But I have to admit, when we were scrubbing and working to remove some of that to get it down far enough to prime and paint and do what we had to do, I actually had a couple of moments of remembering the stories that he was saying, and just how much as a friend. I mean, yes, we're doing apartment maintenance, and we're instructed to be friendly to our residents, but be careful of becoming friends, because at the end of the day, it is a business customer relationship. But it's about going into people's homes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure as a contractor, you go into somebody's home, you never know what you're going to end up seeing. Or interacting with. And in Colonel Bob, I know that there are some things that I do and some ways of thinking that I still think about things that Colonel Bob instilled, or stories that he told me. And
mine was Mrs. Jane.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's interesting you said that one. We'll diverse down some fun stories maybe here in a minute, but these life lessons, you're exactly right. So there was this sweetest little lady. She always said hi. I always stopped to talk to her. I was working in her apartment, working on her air conditioner. So these units were air conditioner, and then we had steam heat, right? And so I'm in working on the unit, and we're just conversing, and I'm looking around the room, and I see all of these airplane photos and this pretty little young lady, and she says, "Do you like electricity and wiring too?" I said, "Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I work on a little bit of everything." She says, "Well, during the war, that's me right there. I wired the consoles of most of the B-52 bombers that went through production." I'm like, "Tell me more." She says,
Wow.
during that time period, women really were never looked at as being a part of the trades, right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do the big, heavy mechanical stuff, even though we wanted to. I grew up working on automobiles with my dad in his automotive shop. So I could have worked on just about anything that the country needed me to work on. But because I was a woman, I was a female, allowed to do that. But because I had so much wiring experience, I got to wire instrumentation panels. So I spent the entire war hand wiring all of the consoles for B-52 bombers. She says, "I could draw a schematic right now if I needed to. I could
Oh,
tell you how
wow.
to operate a B-52 because not only did I do the wiring, I did all of the switches and all the instrumentation as well." So even though I couldn't fly, I wouldn't have been allowed to go through the same kind of training that a man was allowed to. I could probably fly one because I know how they operate. I'm like, that was an interesting life lesson.
Wow. It's stuff like that that uh, you begin to take the life lessons from Judy or from Colonel Bob and apply them to what we're doing on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And that is the really, really cool thing about the varieties of work that you and I end up doing. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
I learned a lot of the home maintenance skills in that period of my life because I was
Mhm.
able to learn from other professionals on a variety of different things. So when we start talking about the different careers in the industry, I think it's very important to understand all of the opportunities and the value that comes in looking at different careers. That had a lot of value financially, it was valuable mentally. It was incredibly valuable, and being able to work indoors was another extremely important part of that period of my life. And there's also some really, really fun stories. I think we can put this episode in Tales from the Trenches. I've got some fun stories. I know. I bet you got some fun stories. I've got to be careful though. I'm not sure what I should rate this one. This might be a PG. Should be at least a PG-13, if not a T-17.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Probably.
somewhere along the lines, just
Okay.
because we do get to go into our residents' homes
Yes.
in their most, I don't know if private is the right way. I would say
think so.
unaware of other people's perceptions
Yeah.
areas, to where you do go to the home and residents answer the door when they're just out of the shower,
Yeah.
or just in potentially compromising situations.
Ooh, yes, absolutely.
um I'll never forget I had a friend of mine that was looking for a job, and we ended up hiring him. It was a guy I knew at church, and we got a call to go to a resident's apartment for the air conditioning
Mm-hmm.
was failing. But this particular resident was a entertainer of the adult variety,
Oh, yeah.
who she liked to bring work home
Yeah.
with her. We'll just say
Sure.
that.
I can imagine. Yep. This visual.
So this work order comes in to go fix the air conditioner, and it's hot enough during the day that it's an emergency. It has to be done. But it was one of those deals of, as an employee of the community, you never knew what you were going to get when you go to her apartment. So me and I'll call to, changing names to
Yeah,
protect
yeah,
the
yeah.
innocent.
Bob.
Joe
Joe.
and I go to the apartment, and I said, "Now, Joe, remember, I had met Joe at church."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Joe," and to little color the story, my wife and his wife were really good friends.
Oh, so everybody's gonna
So
know.
we go, and the first thing I say is, "Joe, you got to come on this work order with me, because I can't, it's not good for
I can't go alone.
a solo
I
person to
can't
go on this."
go.
So we get to the apartment, and I knock on the door, and I said, "Oh, and Joe, by the way, you see that caulking right up there in the corner, right? That corner right there. That caulking is really, really interesting. Knock, 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 knock. And we need to evaluate, what kind of caulking do you think that was?" And about that time, she opens the door, and he's looking up at the caulking, and I'm looking up at the caulking, and I ask the resident, "Do you have air coming out of your vents? I'm here to look at your air conditioner. Is the air coming out of your vents?" And she says, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, well then, I need you to go to your thermostat, turn the temperature way down on the thermostat, and we're going to go work on the outside system there." And she says, "Okay," and she closes the door and goes back inside. And I look at Joe, and Joe's eyes are as big as plates. And all he said was, "I didn't know they made shirts that went down that low." It's these
Surreal.
are people.
It's
These are
just
our
people.
residents. These are uh, and we go into their homes, and I get it. It's their home. They should feel comfortable there. But some situational awareness would be very good if you have something broken and somebody has to come over. Just, it's fun. Another favorite story, and actually, Howard Weiss that works with you, good friend of ours. I told this to him a couple years ago, and he laughed so loud that it interrupted a class nearby that was going on at the conference. And it's a perfect illustration of just the
variety.
Yeah, of people that we end up dealing with. And I got a work order to go work on, if I remember right, it was a kitchen sink in a residence apartment. And so I go up to the door and I knock on the door. And, there is, I'm sure it developed in you, and for a lot of service workers, you get that sixth sense kind of ESP thing where you can't physically detect somebody is home, but somebody's home.
Yep.
For whatever
some odd reason.
Yeah, it's like a radar or something.
Yep.
So I knocked on the door, didn't hear anything. And normal practice is you wait a minute or so, and then knock again loudly to go in. Well, the second time I knocked, I heard this scream behind the door, and the scream was not eek or oh my gosh. It was, if you've ever seen a child in a store, that the child is not ready to leave the store, and mom grabs the child's ear.
Ooh, yeah.
To drag the kid out. Yeah, the time to go pull. And the scream that occurs from the kid yelling, that was the kind of scream that I heard through the door.
Oh, I'm going in.
And personal value. Absolutely. You don't mess with kids.
Absolutely. Let's go see what's happening here.
So I had the key. I ran in, and habit is you start yelling maintenance when you go in the door to try and do it. Nothing going on in the living room. Head down the hallway. Heard it going in there. And lo and behold, there was a young lady that was on her knees right next to the bathtub that had just slit the neck of a goat.
Oh.
So I heard a kid scream.
Oh, wow. Not the kind of kid you were expecting.
Correct. Not the kind of kid that we were expecting. And I don't know what I said, but I do know that I picked up my jaw from the floor.
Oh, man, I can imagine.
Because I'm not sure what or how to even.
What's your response?
Yeah,
I'm here to take a look at your air conditioning. How you doing today?
I did go back to the office and fill out. There's paperwork and stuff that's involved. And when that resident did move out, we did an extra deep clean on the bathroom and bath tile and stuff that went on. So yeah, it's all people. And it's just
people in their life.
That is, as frustrating as people are at times, taking afterward, you think back and just how interesting and amusing that they are. I mean, I hear a recent episode of my podcast. I shared a story of a resident that was having rodent problems, and it worked out really, really well. But in the end of that conversation, I ended up talking with her about maybe she should attempt to teach the rats how to sit up and beg like she was working on her puppy dog with. And maybe that's how it gets around. And it ended up being a laugh line for her, which was great because the story begins with her cussing me out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's just, it's so cool being able to serve people and be exposed to really, really neat people.
Interesting things and different
Yes.
states of mind, things we may not think of encountering all the time. One of my favorite ones, and remember, I'm at this, it is a nursing home. There are many people who are very very sharp, and there are people who could be potentially challenged a little bit. So you have a lot of interesting conversations. But my funnest experience, I think, yet it wasn't directly involved. I was indirectly involved, but it just shows you some of the interesting scenarios that we can encounter in multifamily. Is I'm going down the hallway, and one of the guys that I work with, he did more of the plumbing side of things and a lot of general maintenance, and we'll call him Bob. And so I walk by Bob. Hey, Bob, how's it going? Oh, I'm doing great. Just a simple job here. Just got a commode that needs a new wax ring, and you got a minute? You can help me pull this thing off. I'm like, yeah, absolutely no problem. So I walk up and I'm helping him. So he's undoing the bolts. It's a wall mount, and so he's already drained all the water out, and we're actually just pulling the bolts off from it, helping carry it out, and we set it in the hallway. And okay, Bob, I'll catch you later. I got some P-Tax I got to go take a look at, and I'll meet you down at the shop at lunchtime. We always gather at lunchtime to share stories, right? Some of the best storytelling I ever had was in that period of my time. So I get there, and we're having lunch, and we're just kind of chatting, and it was nice because we had like all the maintenance, all grounds, variety of people telling stories from different perspectives and encounters. And Bob comes in, and he's got this really, really bad look on his face, like really, really bad. And I'm like, what's going on, Bob? He said, people. He said, there's days I absolutely love my job, and there's days that I just don't know what to think about my job. He says, there's things that happen in this kind of work that you just don't ever expect to see, and I just seen it. And I'm like, well, all right, tell us more. Sounds like we got a great story for today. He says, all right, so you remember when you came by and you helped me pull that commode off from the wall? I was like, yep. He said, well, so I went down to the shop to get a wax ring, and I came back up, and somebody pooped in my commode. Right down the hallway.
Hey, when you gotta go,
you gotta go.
Mean,
you gotta go.
That reminds me, I was fixing a garbage disposal one time, and I'm laying underneath the counter, underneath the kitchen cabinet.
Yep.
And I happen to be a larger-ish individual, and they don't exactly make cabinets in large and tall sizes.
Oh, sure. Yep.
So me getting underneath the kitchen sink to fix the escutcheon and the seal that goes on the collar is what I was working on. So I had the garbage disposal dropped, and it was there, and I'm underneath there working directly over my head. So if looking at the camera, I was looking up through, and all of a sudden the resident, she comes and stands and straddles me laying on the floor and commences to turn on the faucet and rinse out her cereal bowl. Hello?
I can't get out of here in a hurry.
Yeah, I full face, it's there, and unfortunately I wasn't wearing the safety eyewear that we're supposed to be wearing, but
I get that.
Still, it's people. That's all it is, and it's a really, really, really cool things that you've got. Funny stories like pooing in a commode in the hallway, and yet you've got Colonel Bob and Judy. It's right. Those paradigms or those ends of the spectrum that can happen at any moment is what makes it really, really cool.
I agree. So for those of you in the HVAC industry that are looking for other fun, interesting opportunities, you want to think outside of the box for your career and think about additional things that you can do with your talents, learn new talents, gain some I guarantee you're going to gain some fun, interesting stories. Look at multifamily. look at property maintenance, look at apartment maintenance, and start thinking about other ways you can use your skills and ways that you can change other people's lives and serve other people. I mean, really, we talk about this all the time. When you're in the trades, you must obviously have a servant heart or just an extreme desire to have some money, because as most of us are in it to serve other people, and it is very rewarding. And so, Paul Rhodes, I appreciate you joining me today. I don't know if anyone gained any education out of this podcast at all, but by golly, it's exactly what working in property maintenance of any form is like. It is fun, it is interesting, it's new skill sets, and it is a great career, without a doubt. We appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, thanks for the invite again. Anytime.
And I will see you at the National HVACR Education Conference in March.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
It is absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.